We are patiently waiting on Lincoln Kennedy. Want to talk about the 2022 Las Vegas Raiders. A lot of excitement about this team. And, we talk about Trey Lance an awful lot and what they're doing. But there's plenty of excitement surrounding the Raiders and Josh McDaniels. Let's bring in Lincoln now. Lincoln, thank you for the time. It is much appreciated. Of course, Lincoln Kennedy, Raiders color analyst, Pac-12 analyst. Lincoln, let's start with Denzel Good. I know it's not super sexy to start with the offensive line, but your thoughts?
Whoa, Nick.
How dare you, Nick?
He's got to be better than that. You got to know it's always good to start off with the offensive line.
Oh, I know.
That's where everything is.
I want to get a rise out of you. Mission accomplished. Let's talk about Denzel Good, though. He retired this week. What's the impact on the offensive line with that move, Link?
Well, you know what? Pro Football Focus has the offensive line ranked almost last. I think it's 29 out of 32. It's the biggest question mark of this football team. How is this offensive line going to do? When they drafted Alex Leatherwood last year, I was excited. But Alex didn't have the year that I kind of thought he was going to have. So I'm hoping that his development in the offseason works out for them. Lester Cotton is another one that's coming along pretty well. It's going to be interesting to see what Josh McDaniels puts together, and it's also interesting to see how they're going to be in preseason. We got a little spoiled over the last couple of years with Gruden there. None of the starters played in preseason. But this offensive line, as you guys know, Nick and Ramie, that the best way for an offensive line to gel is to play together. And they got to play together. They got to play at game speed. So it's one of the biggest question marks that surrounds this team. What's this offensive line going to be like?
And how much can Josh McDaniels do to help that out? Because obviously the guy's got to go out there and execute. But from a play calling standpoint, how much can the Raiders do differently than what we saw last year? So these guys essentially don't have to do as much, Lincoln, when asked to block.
Right. Well, here's the thing, and you'll remember this because when he was with the Patriots, they like to run the football. So that solves basically a lot of the problems if you're able to run the football successfully and set up play action. It shouldn't, the playbook shouldn't sway too much what Gruden was trying to accomplish when he was a head coach, because he had the same type of mindset. Want to push people around, want to bully people around, want to move the ball and control the clock. I think Josh McDaniels is going to have that same sort of mentality. Even though they have those weapons that you're talking about Davante Adams and Hunter Renfrow and Darren Waller, even though they have those weapons, they don't necessarily have to show them off. So I think they'll probably try to maintain a steady dose of running the football to build confidence. And when to answer your question, you simplify the playbook. You don't try to get too deep in year one or even game one for that matter. Simplify the playbook. You just go out there and execute.
Lincoln Kennedy with us here, Cattles Ramie, Sactown Sports 1140. Link, how high are the expectations for Derek Carr from you after the offseason this team has had, of course, including the addition of Davante Adams?
Well, they're really high. But for me, Derek has been around, and he's had the numbers, but it hasn't translated into the wins. So I've been one of those guys that said, look, I like Derek Carr. I think he's a solid quarterback, but there's got to be a time where you're going to either move past him or do something with him. And hopefully this offense can open it up. I think the reason why Derek got that extension, I know the reason that Josh McDaniels was hired, because he had a plan for Derek Carr. He knows how to implement. Derek's not a running quarterback. Gruden tried to get him to run and use his legs. Even though he's athletic, he's not that type of quarterback. He is a pocket passer. And, of course, you know what Josh McDaniels did in his time in New England with Tom Brady in the Hall of Fame career.
Is that the room between where Derek Carr is and his ceiling is wins? Because they say wins and losses aren't a QB stat, Lincoln, but he's put up the individual numbers. But as you pointed out, it hasn't necessarily translated into wins all the time. Is that the difference between where Derek Carr is and what he could be?
Absolutely. You think about it now. Now you look at this division. Some people will argue that Derek Carr is the fourth best quarterback in this division. It's anyone's guess which way you want to go with it. You like Derek Carr, you don't like Derek Carr. But what it translates in, we're in a performance-based business. You got to win. If you don't win, there's something wrong, and you got to move on. So, to answer your question, it does. That's what it translates down to, the wins and losses when it's all said and done.
Lincoln Kennedy with us. Lincoln, let's talk about Davante Adams, but not about what he brings to the table. We all know he's one of the best wide receivers in the game. What does he do to help Hunter Renfrow and Darren Waller within this offense?
Well, what they wanted before Ruggs had his tragic accident and was out of the league. is they wanted somebody who was able to stretch the field to keep those safeties honest. Davante Adams could do that speed. They didn't have that after they lost Ruggs, and it really had an impact their offense last year. So Davante Adams is one of those guys that can stretch the field. No, he's not a Tyreek Hill, but he's a big enough target, and he's a well enough known target where he's going to get attention, not only from cornerbacks, but also safeties. That'll open up the rest of the field with Hunter Renfrow and Darren Waller, and he'll be able to stretch it out.
Where are the question marks on the defense for this Raiders team, Lincoln?
Depth, defensive line and depth. They got to have depth. They one of the things that they tried to do last year, and I know it's a new defensive staff, but they wanted to have an even rotation with defensive line to try to keep people fresh. Now, they're going to play a lot of cover two, so they want to make sure they're able to get a rush back there to rush some of these quarterbacks they're playing against. But that's the biggest question mark: depth and on the defensive line.
Lincoln Kennedy with us, Raiders color analyst, Pac-12 analyst, Cattles Ramie, Sactown Sports, 1140. Link, when you look at this secondary specifically, there have been some questions about depth that, you brought up defensively. The depth is a question, no doubt. Are you optimistic about this secondary after the addition of Rock Ya-Sin?
Well, I will say this, because I'm anxiously awaiting to see how they're going to play in this Jaguars game. They have to have a lot of continuity. There's not a lot of development that has to come along before the season starts. So I'm interested to see what type of scheme they're going to play, how aggressive they're going to be. I assume they're going to probably be very vanilla in this first game, because most coach staffs are in the first preseason game if they're playing starters. But more importantly, to try to develop, I want to see the overall scheme, what they have in plan, because just like you guys, I have question marks at the defensive secondary as well. Who's going to play? Who's going to be there?
Have you had a chance to talk with Josh McDaniels and get a sense for what his leadership style is going to be? Because Lincoln, we know he knows the X's and O's and can draw up a game plan, but what thwarted him in Denver was his leadership style, and a lot of guys didn't necessarily go along with it. Do you think the lessons have been learned and this is a different guy this time around?
I certainly hope so, because the thing is that he's had plenty of job offers over the years, even after Denver. Teams have come to him, and he hasn't taken it. To answer your question, I haven't had a chance to speak with him personally, but I do know this. Mark Davis was excited to go after him, and like I said, he was one of the coaches that they were talking to that had a plan, before Derek Carr. So it'll be interesting to see what lessons he's learned and what type of impact he can have and what leadership role he can have now, because, I was thinking that he was going to stay in New England forever. And when Belichick stepped down, he was just going to take over the job there. That was my thought. So I was surprised to see the Raiders are able to get him.
Last one for you, Lincoln. Is this team a Super Bowl contender if everything comes together for them?
Ooh.
It's a long pause.
It's a long pause, because it's a tough question. As much as I would like to say yes, no. I still don't think they're a Super Bowl bound team, especially in the AFC, as deep as the AFC is. Look, they've got to get through this division first. And that's not going to be an easy test. The Chargers are better. Denver got themselves a quarterback, and I said for a long time they were just a quarterback away of having a good team. And you know what the Chiefs have been doing. So that's an awful lot to talk about when you talk about, where this team is. And then you throw in teams like the Bills or other AFC teams. That's a long push. I think this is a playoff caliber team, but this might also be one of the divisions where you'll have all four teams end the season with a winning record now that they have the 17th game.
No doubt about it. This division is loaded. Lincoln, thank you for the time, man. I really appreciate it. Let's do it again soon.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it, guys. Be good.
Thanks, you. Lincoln. There goes Lincoln Kennedy, Raiders color analyst, Pac-12 analyst. I was going to get into college football at the end, but we didn't have enough time.
How dare you start with an offensive lineman shot?
I wanted it.
Sitting in front of another former offensive lineman, all right? Listen, not quite as decorated as Lincoln Kennedy, but
I laid the carrot out there. Offensive, you offensive lineman?
Yeah. I used to be 320, Nick. Where else were they going to put me?